Do you sometimes feel like you've got one sound when you're singing low, another sound in your middle voice, and then a completely different sound in your high voice? Until you've really got a solid technique, it can feel like the voice breaks down into several different registers that will never come together. In fact, it's useful to think of the voice as something that functions more like a very smooth continuum from low to high. With practice, you can smooth out your voice so that you feel like you're just doing the same thing all the way through. But at first, it can really seem like you've just got to use these different strategies when you're singing low, when you're singing in your middle voice, and when you're singing high. Today, I want to talk about some techniques that you can use to try to smooth all of that out. For example, try saying this simple phrase, sempre ascoso. It means always hidden, and we'll hear this phrase in an aria shortly. But for this demonstration, I'd just like to use these two words, sempre ascoso. If I speak this phrase in my low voice, it may sound very heavy, weighty, and belty. I can go, sempre ascoso. And it feels loud and it feels like I'm projecting. But is that sound going to sound anything like the rest of my voice when I go higher? If I try saying it in my middle voice, what happens? If I go, sempre ascoso, very different sound. And what if I go, sempre ascoso? How am I supposed to get these three different parts of my voice to sound like they're all the same thing? Well, see what happens if you start speaking this phrase low and slide up high. Because if I go, sempre ascoso, what happens if I start there and try to sort of slide up with it, sempre ascoso? I can get some movement there. See if you can start low and go even a little bit higher. Sempre ascoso. That to me feels like a very smooth continuum. If my registration is too heavy on the bottom though, you're going to hear a definite change as I go from low to high. Sempre ascoso. And we don't want to hear a dramatic change like that. Practice it again and see if you can go really slowly and slide up and have it just be continuous without a noticeable change in registration. Sempre ascoso. With practice, you can make it quite smooth. Now, what happens if I start high and try to go back down? What's usually going to happen, unless I practice it, is I'm going to feel like I get stuck in a place of higher registration. I find this one a little bit more challenging. Some people might find it more challenging the other way around, but if I try to go, sempre ascoso, I can't quite get all the way back down to a clear sound in my low range. I'm going to have to practice it. Sempre ascoso. Now I feel like I've got more continuous movement from a higher registration to a lower registration. It can feel like your voice is supposed to fit into distinct registers like chest voice and head voice. The main reason for this is that when you first start studying vocal technique, you've been using your voice to speak for years. We tend to speak very low in our range, and so the way that you use your voice in your speaking range feels like it's got its own special place, its own special register that then has to sort of get worked into the rest of your range. When you start studying vocal technique, you have to access your high range, and you're going to be singing a whole lot higher than where your normal speaking range is. It often feels like where your normal speaking range is one register, which we sometimes call chest voice, and then everything else is going to fit into another register, which sometimes people call head voice. But in fact, the voice really functions the same way whether you're singing low or high. Learning vocal technique means learning how to experience your entire range as existing along a kind of continuum from low to high and back, so that it feels like you're always playing the same instrument all the time, and you can move very, very smoothly throughout these different so-called registers of your voice. Are there some songs or phrases that make you feel like two different singers when you perform them? Share them with us. We'd be happy to show you how to even out your registers.